Well, Sunday update from my end. I'm so tired of packing. I'm going to show you around in a few minutes here what I have packed up. Well, basically it's just a bunch of boxes. But I simply had to comment on this whole upcoming holiday tomorrow, Martin Luther King Day, and the complete idiocy and lies and distortions now coming out from, who would have guessed, the Pentagon. So essentially the Pentagon is now saying that Dr. Martin Luther King would be completely on board with their machinations in Afghanistan and Iraq, because after all, this is a war on terror, and it is all fought in the auspices of freedom for all, and he would be completely on board with all of this. And they're actually distorting some of his own writings in order to make that point. You can do your own research on this, you know, and if you're too lazy to do that, and if you just rely on the mass media to tell you what Martin Luther King actually stood for and what he said and how and why he was against the Vietnam War and all these imperial machinations of our country, and not only of our country but also the machinations of others. Please, you know, do your own homework. Don't rely on the mass media anymore. All I want to point out is this: anything coming from the Pentagon regarding Martin Luther King's support for these wars is an outright lie. It is completely preposterous to even make such a statement. History, you know, is being rewritten as we speak right now. It is as if somehow the civil rights movement was instigated by a bunch of fascists. The amount of lies out there simply defies comprehension. You know, I'm not an expert on the civil rights movement. I wasn't here when that happened. I was a very young girl and living in another country when that happened. And people fighting, or who were fighting for that cause, you know, they had their homes firebombed. They had their families threatened. They stood up in the face of overwhelming bigotry to make a stand. And now, what we're hearing from the likes of Glenn Beck, Ann Coulter, and all these right-wing talk show pundits, it is as if they are the victims. The entire white race in America is the victim of the civil rights movement. I mean, it simply cannot get any more idiotic than this. I know people have problems with this whole, integration thing and private property thing and all of this, but the bottom line is this. Humans are humans, and humans should be considered as humans, no matter what color you are, and no matter how much or how little money you have. After all, we all belong to the same species. And white people in particular, conservative white people, have been very resistant to the fact that things are changing. That the demographics in America are changing. And they're not changing perhaps in their favor, Just like the demographics in the beginning of the Americas didn't exactly work out in the favor of the Native Americans. But all of this history is never mentioned. You see, countries, nations, communities undergoing change. It's not easy for people to accept that. And conservatism, by its very nature, means that you want to keep the status quo. You want to keep the status quo. No change. On the other hand, progressives, and I might also add scientists, usually tend to look forward and they try to see the bigger picture, to see what could be changed for the better. Doesn't, of course, always work out that way. I realize that, okay? But you cannot be stagnant on a living planet. You cannot just simply say that, well, there will be the little people down below, and then there'll be the big ones up top who control everything. This kind of struggle has been going on for centuries. But why is it an undergoing struggle? Why is it there? Because it's a problem that's not going to go away. That's why. So yes, in terms of this holiday, Martin Luther King holiday, I think it should be celebrated. I think the men should be honored. There were lots of things going on in the civil rights movement back in those days, including more militant factions, which also had influence on the establishment, because the establishment was very afraid of uprisings and rebellions, I might add. So there was a dynamic going on between two factions of the civil rights movement. One was more conciliatory, like MLK. The other faction was more militant. You will see this in any kind of opposition movement, which is opposed to the status quo. None of this is anything new or should come as any surprise. But I also believe that I mean, at least me personally, you know, none of us have had the courage to stand up for our beliefs to the degree to have your house burned down, to put your family in danger, to have your family killed or lynched, and so on. None of us can say that. Well, at least not me. I would hope that I would, you know, have that courage when the time comes, but it's easier said than done. People spout off all kinds of shit on YouTube, and when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, things look very, very different. So I'm not the kind of person who's going to make this solemn promise that I will never deviate from my opinions or standpoints, because if I get scared enough, I might just deviate from it, you know. But at least I'm honest enough to admit it